Jamie Lovett, Comicbook.com.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. I guess to start with, it's been a minute since we've seen Barris. What was your reaction when you got a call asking if you were interested in coming back? Were you surprised? Was it something you were waiting on?
I mean, it was something I was hoping for. I'm obsessed with Bariss. I've been obsessed with her since I recorded her over 10 years ago. Um, I think Dave Filoni creates such incredible, complex characters. And also just to be back in the booth with him as a human being, he's just the greatest guy on earth. And I love listening to his brain and seeing the creativity that he's come up with. And fans everywhere have been saying, what happened to her? What's happening? Do you know anything? Do you know if she's coming back? I'm like, I don't know. You got to ask Dave. So it was so exciting, beyond exciting.
Like you said, fans have been wondering like what happened to Barris for years, pretty much since the Clone Wars ended. One of the biggest dangling plot threads. Did you talk about working with Dave? Did he ever say anything that was like, well, here's what I think happened to her? Or did you have your own ideas about like what might have become of her afterwards that, to compare to how it ended up?
Now that I know what happened to her, I feel like I knew that was going to happen to her, but you don't know. Dave doesn't really, he's so good at not telling you. He's so good at not telling you. But as I watched Ahsoka, become a live action show, and we know that Barriss Offee and Ahsoka Tano were best friends during the Clone Wars, there's always like imaginations that I have of like how it could progress. But I am blown away by the choices that Dave made for this arc. And I didn't actually know how it was going to go because every single script I got was newly presented to me. And so after the first episode, you see her, and then you're like, what happens? And then the next episode is a new track. It's wild. It's an incredibly intense, deep arc with twists and turns, and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Murray, do you think so? I don't want to give anything away, but she goes on a journey in these three little like shorts. There is a lot that happens to her. And it's not like, Star Wars is kind of a fable, and you have your Jedi and you have your Sith, but she goes on a completely different path. Do you think is there a moral to her story that you think comes out in these episodes? Something that's really sets her apart from the usual Jedi Sith stuff that Star Wars does?
Listen, I think every character is presented with choices that can define their destiny. I think the show kind of leaves you with this wonderful message that you always have a choice of how you're going to proceed in your life, where fates take you, where your inner moral code takes you. So there is something in Barriss. She has a strength and she has conviction in her beliefs, and I think she follows them. I think sometimes you're forced to do things you might not want to do, but I still think there is an inherent strength in Barriss that leads her to her choices.
Do you think, there's this, without saying too much, there's a bit of a gap between a couple of the episodes where we leave Barriss and where we catch up with her. Do you think there are, more stories to be told about her in that gap? Or do you almost prefer that she just got to have a relatively quiet period in between those two events?
Well, listen, since we've seen her, she was in jail. So I think she's been mulling over her behavior, just like any person who gets thrown in jail. I think it's their time to reflect on what they've done, who they are, what they believe. And I think that's very internal. If there was going to be a show during that time, it would literally be like her brain. It would just be like her thoughts, her feelings, her heart, how she's going to choose to live her life. So I don't know that there's much during that time for her other than sitting and stewing in her personal beliefs and thoughts. So I really love how they picked up her story.
Were you
and where
surprised?
they find her. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying where they find her.
Right.
Where her brain's at that moment, and the choices that she's going to have to make.
Were you at all surprised? And, I'll save this question till after the show comes out in case it spoils anything, but were you at all surprised that the rest of her story didn't involve another meeting with Ahsoka since you mentioned that they were such close friends back in the day?
I'm going to say is you don't know what, this was 3 episodes, so we don't know what happens. I hope things happen. I believe, she would like to have a reunion with her to like hash things out and perhaps apologize. I don't know. That's my personal thought, but it's all up to Dave. And I would love to see Barris chatting with Ahsoka again. I think they'd have a lot to talk about.
Very cool. Well, I'll leave you with this question. Assuming that Barris's story is over, are there any other
Never assume, James. Never assume.
I didn't say hoping. I hope to see more, but
don't assume.
If her story is done, are there any other kinds of characters that you think you'd enjoy playing in the Star Wars universe, bounty hunter, alien, whatever? Or are you so attached to Barris that she?
I'm very attached to Baris, but I also played a few other characters. I played I played a bunch of other characters in the show. I wish Shea Monway and Pluma Sodi, and there was a whole bunch. Ione Marcy. I would love to play a droid. I think I loved, when Taika Waititi played a droid was it The Mandalorian? I love that. And after working with Nika Futterman, she was Asajj Ventress. Being bad is so fun. Having a bad, scary voice. Oh, I love it. The show is one of my favorites. So to be anything in this universe is a blessing.
Awesome. Well, the Tales of the Empire is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I hope to see you back in the Star Wars universe. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, James.
Thanks.
May the fourth be with you.
We get a lot of backstory on Morgan in these episodes. Right. Did you have any idea about any of this stuff in her history when you were playing the role in live action, or was this all entirely new to you?
Oh, no, there was no confirmation really, which, I wondered at times if maybe Morgan was still just this, creatively this evolving character. But, Dave would always spoon feed exactly what I needed because he's very strategic, and maybe too, he might have been exploring and investigating maybe other ideals with his team. I don't know, that's a Dave Filoni question. But for me, I had to try to create a background for her as much as possible when I did Mandalorian, and then when I would later do Ahsoka. And so I relied heavily on Timothy Zahn and his books because I figured she would be in the same company as the other people surrounding Thrawn. But then also I relied on Ian Convery's short tale called Bug. And so I had to kind of initially make choices that she must have been there. She must have seen something, but there was never any confirmation until Tales of the Empire. I'm like, wow. And when you see the relationship, this is what I'm excited that you get to actually see the relationship that she has with her people, with her fellow Night Sisters, that they were all just one close unit. And her mom, the relationship with her mom, being this effective woman warrior going up against Grievous, so you start to see like how she was raised. And also too, that little interesting, unique connection to the Force that they all kind of had, especially like, her mother and her. And yeah, it's all fascinating to me. I'm just thrilled.
Yeah, as having read those Timothy Zahn books, I really loved how snugly she fits into that story now. It was impressive how they did that.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So knowing what you know now, do you feel like your impression of who Morgan is has changed? Do you think she's more sympathetic? Do you think she's, maybe slightly different shade of bad than you thought she was when you were playing her in live action?
I have definitely more sympathy for Morgan now that we really have a confirmation of her history on Dathomir. But I also feel she's a cautionary tale too. She's a cautionary tale in the sense that, like, if you look at Ahsoka and her, these are two characters that both have seen horrible things growing up as children, right? And this, yet you have the Ahsoka character who would take a road of light, right, and be a force for good, and then you have Morgan, who really, for whatever reason, it was her anger that carried her through. her attitude of revenge and just remembering her people. And one way or another, she was going to make sure that the galaxy was going to pay back for whatever happened. And she was going to keep to her vision of what will happen for her people, hopefully restoring Dathomir, which we see in Ahsoka. But I just love the prequel. And I think what's more fascinating, and I say this over and over, is that we get to see too that she was capable of loving people too, and I think that's very important.
It's, when you were playing her in live action, a lot of that was very physical. Obviously, the pole and the fight scenes and all of that. Was it tricky to tap into that again, just doing the voice without all the body language and the physical stuff, or did you find it was easy to get back there?
It's interesting because I was watching Pedro Pascal when on the behind the scenes when he was doing the recordings for Mandalorian. So I go, oh, that's probably going to be what I would do. And it is. I mean, I don't know how you can arrive in a booth and not do those things to physically prep you. So, or at least that's my process. So, I mean, I do all the breathing. I sometimes, if I knew the fight scene was right, I will jump in place and, I mean, I'm literally in my own actor's bubble, pulling creatively from my imagination and seeing in the space and time whatever is happening in the scene. So yeah, it's I don't see that much of a difference, other than I'm in a recording booth.
I feel like they should have had you holding the Beskar spear while you were recording. I think that would have.
I held like a pencil or a pin like this, and I was like, I think at one point I did, for sure. So, but it was fun. I love doing animation. I love it.
Is there, we get these episodes and it fills in a lot, but there are still gaps in her story. And we know that Star Wars abhors a gap in any story. They love to fill those things in. Is there any particular point in her life or kind of situation that you would like to revisit with her? Like, would you like to play more of her as the warlord or more of her as that inventive person we see in the second episode?
Well, okay, so it's interesting. I love this question because the one thing that was never answered for me, but I'll let Dave and company surprise me. Maybe, I don't know, if it ever comes out. I want to know how she got the Beskar spear. I really do. That's the one thing I was pondering, going, oh, but we haven't arrived at knowing how or where or why she has the Beskar spear. And that's a huge question. So inquiring minds out there, I don't know. Right. Do you want to know? I don't know. It's fascinating. I want to, I can only use my imagination, but it does, it does beg the question of how and why. So maybe.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Tales of the Empire was a lot of fun to watch. I look forward to seeing or hearing more of you in the Star Wars universe. So thank you.
Thank you so much. May the force be with you.